We want to solve quadratic functions by square roots, and we want to solve quadratic equations algebraically by square roots. So here we have f of x equals 2x squared plus 36, and we can substitute whatever we want. In this case, when we're solving, we want to find out when this expression is equal to 0. So substituting in for the y value, we're going to say 0 equals 2x squared plus 36. And whenever we're solving, we want to use GEMDAs. And we always want to start with addition and subtraction and work our way to groups. So first thing we come to addition, and the inverse of addition is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 36 from both sides of the equation, and we get negative 36 is equal to 2x squared. Next, we see that we don't have any more addition and subtraction, so we move down the line, and we see that we do have 2 multiplied by x squared. So the inverse of multiplication is division. And so we are going to divide both sides by 2. Then we have the 2 cancels the 2. And we're left with x squared is equal to negative 18. Then we see that we don't have any more addition. We don't have any more multiplication or division. So the next thing we come to is exponents. So we have x squared. In order to get rid of that squared, we need to take the square root of both sides. And so the square root cancels the square, and we're left with x. And anytime that we solve using the square root, we have to do plus or minus the square root of negative 18. And then we have to think about, can we reduce what's underneath the radical? And in this case, we can rewrite what's underneath the radical as, we can write it down as plus or minus. We can write the square root of 18 as 9 times 2, and we can do the square root of negative 1. So we know that the square root of negative 1, that's I, and we know the square root of 9 is 3. So we can write this down as plus or minus the square root 2, and then we have the I there, and then the 3 goes out front. So our final answer for this one is, we can say plus or minus 3 square root 2 I. That's equal to x. So there's a bunch of different ways we can write this, and we'll write a few of them because these are all multiplication. So we could write this down as x equals plus or minus 3i times the square root of 2. Or we can write this down as x equals 3i square root of 2 and x equals minus 3i square root of 2. We could also write it where we had 2i. There's just a bunch of different ways that we could write this down. Any one of them would be acceptable. Next one we look at is number 6, and we have g of x equals 9 times x squared plus 1. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use GEMDAs. And we always start with subtraction and addition and work our way to groups. So here we see that we have to rewrite it first of all, because whenever we're solving a quadratic, we want to have the left side equal to 0. So 0 equals 9x squared plus 1. And so we want to solve to get x squared by itself. So we're going to subtract 1, because we found addition, so we want to subtract, and then we get -1 equals 9x squared. Then we see that we have multiplication, so the inverse of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide by 9. And then we get -1/9 is equal to x squared. And then we have an exponent that we want to get rid of. In order to get rid of the exponent, we have to take the square root of both sides. And so the square root cancels the square. And anytime we solve using the square root, we have to do plus or minus the square root of -1/9. Always have to do plus or minus. So now we have to think about how to simplify this answer here. And so we can write it down as the square root of 1. It's actually plus or minus the square root of 1 over the square root of 9. So we counted for the 1, we counted for the 9, and now we still need that negative sign. And then we have the square root of -1. Okay. Now we can rewrite all of this as plus or minus. The square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 9 is 3. And the square root of -1 is I. So in this case, we get x is equal to plus or minus 1/3 I. Or we could write it down, x equals 1/3 I and x equals -1/3 I.